Global tensions are on the rise. You have friendly fire from Ukraine. They shot down their own fighter jet using an American missile. You have things are just getting out of control in Brazil. There's a massive tug of war between the government of Brazil and Elon Musk and the entire platform of X. And everybody in Brazil seems to be now using a VPN because they've banned X in all of Brazil. But more on that later. I have also found out how Justin Trudeau has brain damage. So stay tuned for the end of the video to find that answer. And the pro-Palestine protests are happening across Canada. Well, they're tearing up the grass at a university and asking students to walk out. I don't know. It's getting out of control. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And speaking of VPNs in Brazil, which is a massive hot topic right now, everybody needs to protect themselves in real life, right? You need to protect yourself, protect your family, make sure you know, some sort of self-defense, make sure you have food, make sure you have like a safety plan, right? But also online, which is what Brazil is really going through right now. And we're going to get into the specifics about that later. But first, since we're on the topics of VPN, I have a message for today's sponsor. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. We have teamed up and we are offering my audience 83% off by using code SUNSHINE, which can be linked down in the description or the pinned comment below. We're living in a world of censorship, and Justin Trudeau is at the forefront of this race. Canadians are being censored left, right, and center, which is why you have to protect yourself with a VPN, such as Private Internet Access. What a VPN does is it encrypts your information so that while you're browsing online, you're going to different websites, your information, your personal data is not shared with these massive corporations. It's almost like putting a cloak over yourself. And the best possible way that I like going about this is using the cloak, such as Private Internet Access. Even when it comes to getting the news here in Canada, there's an insane level of censorship. You can't even get Canadian news on Facebook, for crying out loud. Above and beyond the news, if you want to get different content on streaming platforms such as Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, because a lot of these corporations, they geo-lock content, such as in Canada, you can only watch Canadian Netflix. But with Private Internet Access, you can bypass that and you can watch American Netflix, UK Netflix. It's really an interesting thing, and it unlocks a whole new world of content out there. The best part about it is that you're not just restricted to doing that from a computer or a tablet. You can do that from your phone, and you can have a whole lot of devices linked to your Private Internet Access account, which is incredible. Private Internet Access is not only user-friendly, it's extremely affordable, and it is the best way of saying F you to the government. You can get 83% off of Private Internet Access by using the link down in the description or the pinned comment below. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, friendly fire in Ukraine. Ukraine has shot down its own F-16 jet with a U.S. Patriot missile. Zelensky has apparently sacked the head of the Air Force, which is a pretty big deal. But nonetheless, this comment right here summarizes it pretty well. Taxpayers' money well spent. And then in other news, you have Raytheon has sold advanced weapon technology to Russia, China, and Iran without authorization. Now, this company is headquartered out of Virginia County in the United States, and they are under serious trouble for doing that because of all of these sanctions that have been imposed on trading with Russia, especially the fact that it's advanced weapons. And it seems like, us getting closer and closer to the potential of World War III is greed. Greed from governments, greed from private companies. People are trying to make money as fast as possible, as much money as possible. And that's going to lead to the death of millions, potentially billions of people, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's something that we have to look forward to, but not before China starts bullying Filipino Coast Guard. This is absolutely crazy. So you have a Chinese Coast Guard, and they're just literally ramming their ships into the Philippine Coast Guard, which is crazy. Let's take a look at this. You have all that open ocean.
Camera, damage.
Now, look, sure, there could have been very well an accident, but there's all that open ocean and tensions. Anything involving China seems to be extremely high and volatile right now, and I would not be surprised if that was on purpose. And speaking of China, we have another country that has decided to be a member of BRICS. Turkey has said we would like to become a member of BRICS. Now, this is the map of BRICS. This is 4 years ago. It could very well, it likely is very different right now. But as you can see, most of the world is divided into two. You've got NATO and BRICS. And then a user here commented, there's a bit of a difference. NATO is a defense alliance with treaty obligations. BRICS is not that, but a very loose economic cooperation group with few, if any, treaty obligations. And as a Canadian who has Justin Trudeau as the Prime Minister, I can safely say that even though there are obligations, Canada fails to meet those obligations year after year. So it seems like our obligations with NATO are very loose, but that's not to say that in a growing, enemy group, or so to say, or a threat is not growing, which is exactly what's happening. BRICS, Russia is really doing a good job of poaching a lot of countries from NATO, or potentially, future NATO countries over to BRICS. And let me know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. And then you have Blair White, the world's favorite male dressed as a woman, I suppose. I'm sorry, but how the hell did we land on the moon back in 1969, but can't retrieve our astronauts from a space station in 2024? And for those who don't know about that, there are some astronauts floating in outer space, and the timeline for that rescue mission and when they can actually be rescued has been pushed further and further and further away. And it seems like it's February 2025 is the earliest anyone could get to them. Kind of crazy. Seems like a sci-fi movie unraveling in front of our very eyes, but nonetheless, that is the situation. And then you have this right here. A toddler apparently was crying nonstop during a flight, and two strangers locked her in the bathroom. That is pretty wild. Pretty wild if that is true. And then we have to talk about Brazil. This guy right here, Alexandre de Moraes, he is not the president. He's not a prime minister. He's a judge. This guy is a judge, the justice of the Supreme Federal Court, also known as Andre de Valdemort, whose nuts are being dragged on him by the X platform. That would be Elon Musk sharing this meme of his platform's nuts dragging on that judge's face. I'm sure that that would ease tensions very easily. On the contrary, because millions of people around the world are now setting their VPNs to Brazil to mess with the Brazilian authorities, because tensions are so high and pretty much all of Brazil has no option but to use a VPN to access platforms such as X. So X goes offline in Brazil after Elon Musk's refusal to comply with local laws. Millions of users shut out and 500,000 switch to rival platforms as providers enact Supreme Court ban. This is because there's a massive kind of legal dispute between Brazil and the Supreme Court and Elon Musk's platform, where basically you can just chalk everything up to Elon Musk wants free speech on X to a certain degree, as long as you're not breaking laws. Brazil says, we don't like that, and we want to make sure that you don't have the ability to spread your truth, your freedom of speech here in Brazil, because the government wants to control everything. Sound familiar? Do I have your attention? Great. Well, that is being replicated, or is about to be replicated, around the world, especially since Kamala Harris has recently said on camera that what her own opinion of what Brazil is doing is good, and that if she is elected as president, she's going to be looking at doing that exact same thing, banning X. And this is very, very murky water, daughters, when you start to give governments that ability to literally ban certain apps, massive influential apps, because the CEOs or the creators of the apps just don't want to comply with, suppressing freedom of speech. And that's something that Mark Zuckerberg has admitted to in the past, that the Biden-Harris administration forced him to comply with suppressing, freedom of speech, many years ago with the Trump elections and all that. And it seems like Mark Zuckerberg is having a very interesting arc right now, going from villain to potentially a hero, where he seems to be a little bit more base, but we're going to have to see how that plays out. And let me know if you know anyone that's affected by these, massive shutdowns or lockouts in Brazil. Now, Elon Musk, to kind of wrap up this entire story here, has said, I keep telling people that this guy, Alexandre, the judge, is a dictator of Brazil, not a judge. He just wears that as a costume. He has a supreme executive, judicial, and legislative power, aka dictator. The cloak he wears is to trick fools in the West into thinking that he's a judge. And as of recording this, it has over 6 million views. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. It really seems like governments are really trying their best now to just shut everything down that they don't agree with. And it seems like we're heading into this dictator world. And I, for one, don't like that, and I'm assuming you guys don't either. Next up, we're having shifted to Canadian news now. You got Justin Trudeau, who's been kind of caught with his hands in his pockets, shrugging, when at a recent press conference at a steel mill, a steel worker went up to him and asked him a question. And this is what how Justin Trudeau responded. Now, there isn't a video right now that I've been able to pull up about this, but nonetheless, even if it's just a simple question, as the prime minister of a country, you shouldn't have your hands in your pockets like that when someone's asking you something. And just his whole demeanor, it's not relatable. That's just a weird way to respond to anybody, especially when you're the leader of a country. And that's, these little things, they add up. And that's why so many people are flocking to the Conservatives and giving their trust to Pierre Poilievre with their support and potential votes, because when Pierre talks to people, he doesn't look like this. He gives people the time of day. He faces people. He's got his hands out of his pockets, and he's able to actually try and relate to the people, and he doesn't turn it into his own narcissistic story, which is what we know Justin Trudeau does more than not. Then you have this report here of the RCMP. So a 15-year-old boy from central Alberta called 911 to help alleging people were trying to kill him. And he is dead after 2 RCMP officers shot him, according to the RCMP. So he called the police because people were trying to kill him, and the officers showed up and they killed him, the person who made the initial call. That's the amount of details that we have right now. This whole situation is kind of murky. There's a lot of controversy because it seems like that person may have made a false call, but we're gonna have to wait and see how that plays out. But we're living in a time right now where police trust is at an all-time low, and a lot of people just really feel uneasy about police, especially the RCMP. And then in unrelated news, you have, compared to 3 years ago, trips to the emergency department take an average of 20 to 30% longer across Canada, according to a new report from the Canadian Institute of Health Information. That isn't really surprising. I know that the whole entire medical system here, other people from other countries used to say, wow, you have free healthcare in Canada. What is that like? And now it's almost embarrassing to say that you're Canadian when you're talking about a lot of things, but specifically healthcare, because our healthcare system is so broken. Me and my family, my 2 children, we don't even have a family doctor, and we've been on a wait list since before my first child was born, just about 2.5 years ago. So it's just insane what's going on here in Canada. And I'm sure a lot of people have some horror stories about their experiences in the medical system here in Canada. And then you have this post here from Table Salt saying 2 weeks from now, you're going to start seeing the apocalyptic articles about the August Toronto area condo market and the need for bailouts. 920-ish sold with 3,500 listed, slowest in the last 20 years. extreme buyer's market. So buyer's market, from my understanding, is when there is a lot of options to choose from. It's not to be confused with buyer's market. You would think, at least me, I would initially think that that would mean everyone's buying, but that's not the case. It's nobody's buying, everything's for sale, and you have all of these pickings. Whereas a seller's market is more advantageous for sellers because you sell it and it's like a 72-hour, less than a week or 2 week sale, and it's just off the market like we saw earlier in 2021 and in 2022. Really feels like our real estate industry is headed into a massive decline. And if you're feeling that way too, it's probably because it's likely to happen. At least that's a lot of people's gut feelings. And then you have this post here by CTV. Is it getting too expensive to raise a child in Canada? Short answer, yes. Long answer, oh yeah, it's getting very expensive. The cost of snacks, the cost of diapers, the cost of everything has gone up. And I have 2 kids, and even I, who would benefit directly from this $10 a day childcare hypothetical program, which is the reason I call it a hypothetical program, is yes, it does exist. And yes, maybe a few people do benefit from it, but it would take 4 years on a wait list, 2 years before we even knew we were going to have our first kid, to have, to get on these programs. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. They're not feasible. And so the government tries to give these handouts to new parents, and it's not really that good. The child benefit payment is a little bit of money, but depending on your tax bracket, that would obviously vary how much you could get. But nonetheless, it doesn't really feel like Canada has a lot of incentives to have children. High cost of living, younger people, not a lot of us own houses. Not a lot of us are financially, in a good position, and just without having kids. Then you add the idea of having kids. And so I personally know a lot of my friends from high school, college, and all that stuff, they don't really have kids. I'm one of the few that has kids because everyone is too afraid to have kids. I personally moved out of a major city and I have kids and I'm able to afford it in that aspect. But people living in major cities like Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, it's very, very difficult. And then we have this post here. So the Canada Pension Plan has invested $300 to $430 million in a new building, a new commercial project. That is absolutely insane. And I, for one, don't really understand why the Canadian Pension Plan would need to put that much money into a new office. We went through an era, albeit it was forced, where you had a lot of people that were able to work remotely, who companies didn't, they weren't quick to push that until the government said, no, mandated, you have to work remotely. And so we got to experience a whole wide of different reactions. That was beneficial to some. It was horrible for others. And then since things have kind of calmed down from the COOF and all that stuff, there's been a bit of a middle ground where people have been able to return to work, but it's maybe temporary in office and, half and half or 70-30. And that, divisiveness or dividing of the time spent in office rather to at home, it varies on what your position is and your employer and the relationships and all of that stuff. But nonetheless, you have to kind of ask what's more expensive at the taxpayer's expense, or in this case, the Canadian Pension Plan members' expense. And putting $300 million into an office building, that just seems highly unreasonable when most of that work, if I'm not mistaken, could probably be done from home. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Canada is the land of wasteful spending. So I'm really not surprised that they're spending that much money on an office building that probably isn't very much needed. And then you have this older video here of the Ontario Premier saying, hey, if you plan on coming to Canada to commit crime, how about you don't? Yeah.
Anywhere in Ontario, and it doesn't matter what race, what creed, what religion you're from. I'd be saying the exact same thing if it was another community as well. But enough is enough. You're bringing your problems from everywhere else in the world. You're bringing it to Ontario, and you're going after other Canadians, as the Prime Minister said, unacceptable. I got an idea. Before you plan on moving to Canada, don't come to Canada if you're going to start terrorizing neighborhoods like this. Simple as that. You want to come to Canada. You're a resident of Ontario. You get along with everyone. I don't care what background, what religion, what race you come from.
Right. And it just feels like it's the media and left-wing radical people make you feel racist for commenting on statistics, on facts. But nonetheless, let me know what you guys think about that. And then you have this report right here. University of Canada say that enrollment by students from outside of Canada has fallen below the cap the federal government set on international student visas this year, which means that less and less people from other countries are wanting to come to Canada to study. And then also the temporary foreign workers permit ban, which the government just implemented the other day. All of these things probably mean that we're going to see a slight to massive reduction in immigration, or at least people coming here, immigrants from a younger demographic. And time is only going to tell how the government plans to tackle actual immigration numbers and asylum seekers. I think the majority of Canadians are on board with the idea of let's just stop that for a little bit, like not reduce it, not from 1 million to 500,000, not from 500,000 to 200,000. Let's just pause and see how that goes for a little bit. And I might as well just pass the question off to you guys. How do you feel about that? Would you like to see no immigration for the foreseeable future, or a reduction in immigration? And if so, by how much? Let me know what you guys think. And then you have Chrystia Freeland, who is questioned about the tanking of the polls by Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, and this is what she had to say.
Pierre Poilievre says that now is the time for an election. He even said that the NDP and the Bloc need to force one. He called on the NDP leader to recall the supply and confidence agreement, and it seems that voters are a little bit frustrated with the government. The Liberals are trailing the Conservatives by double digits in the polls. So why not get ahead of things and call an election right now? Is this something the government would consider?
Well, thank you for the question. And I think we need to really take these assertions by the Conservative leader with a very healthy grain of salt. The reality is, in recent weeks and months, we have had a steady stream of good economic news for Canadians. We have had inflation within the Bank of Canada's target range for 7 months in a row, down to 2.5% in July. We have had interest rates coming down twice, and market analysts forecasting they are going to continue to come down. We have had wages outpace inflation for 18 months in a row. And the recession that so many economists, so many analysts were predicting at the height of COVID hasn't materialized. It looks like Canada is going to achieve a soft landing with the second fastest growth in the G7 this year, and forecast to have the fastest growth in the G7 next year. Now, all of that for everyone here, that is really good news. That is good news for you in your life. It is good news for households and families across the country. But it turns out it is bad news for the Conservatives. And I think it's pretty pathetic that the good news, the good economic news that we are seeing for Canada and Canadians, the Conservatives feel is bad news for them. They can see that that good news is going to keep on coming, and I think they're a little bit worried about that.
Right. I just have a hard time listening to her. And I've noticed in previous videos, either on this channel or on my extra channel, whenever I show a clip of Chrystia Freeland, a lot of people say I had to mute her, I had to skip forward. I'm sorry, Mr. Sunshine. I can't stand her shrieking voice. And I'll be honest, I feel the same way a lot of the time. So let's just move on to some crazier news and scope in here on what's happening at some university campuses across Canada. So last night in Montreal, you have the pro-Palestine group Living the Resistance here. Now, they seem to have used a projector on the outside of a building to show flames. Right. Yeah, kind of weird, but nonetheless, it gets even weirder. So you have Montreal, after their McGill encampment was put to an end, they are now back and destroying the new grass that was laid. Yeah, I'm sure that'll end well. I don't know if they realize that this is causing property damage and there's actual consequences. That's so bizarre. Like, what are you going to accomplish and whose attention are you going to accomplish by doing that? So the students, or these pro-Palestine radical people, they took it a step further and they went into the university campuses where there were some lectures that were happening, and they gave speeches saying, come on, everybody, we got to get out of here.
In our education, we need to build a movement that cannot be ignored. We need everyone to walk out, show that there's support for Palestine, and show that we can change what's happening right now. So come join us, walk out right now.
We're all meeting outside right now near the Roger Faith, so just come join us and let's go.
And as you can see, there's a tremendous amount of support. Says nobody really cares about that. It's a university. People are there to study. They're not there to rip up the grass and wave Palestine flags. I'm sorry, but your movement is pretty slowly dying. And especially when the government is going to get involved. I mean, you can't possibly get away with destroying property on camera as part of your protest and guise it as, well, it's in support and solidarity with Palestine. It makes absolutely no sense. It's property damage. That's a crime. And I think eventually there will be some repercussions. Speaking of repercussions, now let's talk about Justin Trudeau's brain damage. So I did make a video about this on my extra channel, but I wanted to give it a little bit more of a spotlight on the main channel. So recently, Justin Trudeau made a visit to Olympic bronze medalist for boxing here in Canada. And he did some sparring with them. It's half decent, which refreshed my mind as to the last time Justin Trudeau did some boxing. Now, you may have seen this clip, but I've done you a favor and I've pulled it up again. So I have had to mute the music because it actually is synchronized perfectly with Eye of the Tiger. But as you can see, this is an older video of when Justin Trudeau was boxing with a coach or something like that, and absolutely got rocked. Like 100% brain damage from this, because it must be, this is my speculation, right? There's no facts to back up on this, but I do think that ever since then, Justin Trudeau's ums and ahs really started to kick in. It might have he should probably get checked. He should probably do a CAT scan or something. And then this video here, unless you've seen the extra channel video, this is an actual charity boxing match that Justin Trudeau attended.
Oh my God.
Trudeau is in red.
One-round fight, Brian.
Well, they're going 3 rounds. They are going 3 rounds. Either way, Ezra. 3 rounds, 2 minutes each, unless there's a knockout. You don't normally see knockouts in Olympic-style amateur bouts.
Brazo's gasping for air. He's got more muscle, needs more oxygen.
But he's still laying more punches, and the crowd is drowning out the
And I mentioned this on my extra channel, and I would gladly do it again right now. I think that if the government put together a boxing fight like this, a charity boxing fight for all the party leaders that wanted to attend, I think it would sell. It would bring a lot of positive attention to Canadian politics, and it would be an opportunity for the party leaders to, to do what they want to do, take out their anger and their frustrations with their competitors within the safety confines of a boxing ring, get it done. No more ums and ahs, no more stuttering, no more Mr. Speaker this, Mr. Speaker that, just straight up boxing. I think that would sell out. I think that would be incredible for Canada, and it would bring international news where the government got together for a charity boxing match, all party leaders, and there was some form of a tournament. I think that will be awesome. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. That, ladies and gentlemen, is where we're going to end this video. Love to know what you guys think about any of the comments or any of the topics that were covered. And on your way out, I would like to encourage you guys one last time to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. We are super close to 400,000 subscribers, and let's see if we can get there before the end of September. I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.